This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Well, good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. We're so glad you can join us. In today's show, I talk with Casey Anderson, the manager of the Governor's Charity Steer Show, about the charity event's 40th anniversary. Dustin brings us his report from yesterday's Plots in the Park event. And as always, we take a look at the ag weather outlook. But first, let's kick it over to Dustin for our ag market recap.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, we're at the end of the trading day here on Wednesday, and we're going to recap everything here with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Jim, how are things going today?
Very, very volatile day, Dustin. Is the best way to describe it. We came in this morning and everything was under pressure. The headline news that came out overnight was Russia has offered to essentially open up food corridors to get some of that Ukrainian food out of the country. Mind you, there's about 22.5 to 25 million metric tons of grain. Some of it sitting in boats in the ports waiting to be exported, but due to the war, they can't get it out. The Russians made that offer. The market reacted negatively across the sector. Corn, beans, and wheat were all under immense pressure. And then, as we came through the day, the Russians kind of said, hey, there is one caveat to that offer. If you want the grain, you've got to lift all these sanctions that you've slapped on us. And plain and simple, I don't believe the rest of the world is going to do that. And then it seems like the market came to the same conclusion as we spent the most of the day retracing, gaining back almost all of today's early session losses on that news.
Yeah, it definitely was one of those situations where, boy, it sounded good this morning, but yeah, if they're wanting something in return, it's almost seeming like, something that's just not equal in the balance there, and you're not going to see that happen. But, obviously that still puts us in a little bit of a pinch as to where we're going to be getting some of those supplies from globally, especially with different things happening in the marketplace.
Well, there's no doubt about it. That's why the world reacted so negatively to it, because the fact of the matter is that Ukraine does feed a lot of the Europeans and the African countries. The price of food continues to go higher. Anybody who's been to the grocery store knows, the grocery bill is going higher by the week, it feels like. So yeah, the lack of that supply is definitely having a pinch. And it's not just the old crop. Now it becomes a new crop issue. They have actually got quite a bit of grain in the ground right now, and maybe a little bit ahead of the U.S. base. But now you get become a real situation into the fall harvest is where do you store that grain? Because they're not ready to, they're not set up to store this year's crop because they're planning usually, just like the United States, they get rid of the old crop and store the new crop. So all of a sudden you could even have a lot of grain that essentially goes bad on top of this. So this situation is very dire. And what that does is that does provide support to the U.S. markets because plain and simple, if you can't get the grain out of the Ukraine, you got people to feed, you're going to look for different suppliers. And the U.S. is one of the suppliers that the world importers are looking at.
And obviously with the U.S., we have our own issues, especially if we're looking at planting right now. Obviously, a lot of progress got made last week. We still have a little ways to go yet. What are you hearing in some of those areas as far as people finishing up or people who are kind of stuck in a holding pattern right now?
Right now, we are making a little bit of progress, but you get to the northern western part of the Dakotas, they're still struggling. Talked to some big producers today that were driving around looking for acres to try to plant. The ground is still too wet. They are optimistic that a drier weekend will allow some more progress to be made. But the reality is, if the rain comes in this weekend, you're going to be racing to prevent plant crop. So it's something we need to keep an eye on. My guess is we will not get all 89.5 million acres of corn planted, and it could be as many as 500,000 to 1 million acres that end up going prevent plant if the weather does not cooperate.
And, as we look at the old crop too, we now how much is still left to be marketed or how much is still sitting around is one thing. But, when we look at these basis bids that are going on around the country, seeing some very volatile swings in what they are one day to the next one, even when we do the reports.
It's very, very volatile on the basis, but in general, the trend is up right now because we're down to the point where it looks like the producers that are holding on grain, they're going to hold tight on it until they get a better handle what their crop looks like. thinking, pollination time for the corn crop and maybe that late summer weather for the bean crop. The reality is, Dustin, the weather guys still are trying to argue as we go into late June, July, August, this weather maps could turn warm and dry. We'll see if that's accurate. So those producers are down to a lot of them are down to what they like to call their gambling bushels, and they're just going to sit tight, which means if you are an end user and you really need to get your needs covered, it is going to take a pry bar to get it out of your hands. In essence, what you're going to have to do is bid up aggressively on the basis, and that's what you're seeing. Maybe a little bit better basis in the West and the East at this point in time, as the Western has the river market as well, is showing a little bit of strength because we are continuing to move some grain down through the New Orleans. So that's helping the basis a bit. But in general, we'd look for the basis to remain relatively strong going into the latter part of spring until we can make sure, until the market's comfortable that the 22 production is off to a good start.
And when we look at that 30,000 foot view, like you said, the basis is trending up. I mean, what was it looking like just a couple months ago?
Well, a couple months ago, it was struggling a little bit. But in general, what we've seen, though, is because of the war in the Ukraine and taking all that grain out of the Ukrainian supply or the world's export supply, it's forcing buyers in the United States, forcing buyers to come to the United States. China was going to import up to 6 million metric tons of Ukrainian corn. They can't get their hands on it right now. Ukraine is the largest exporter of sunflower oil. So essentially that was driving the price of palm oil up, which then drove the price of bean oil up, which then essentially drove the price of the crush up, which then, allowed them to bid up to get the beans. So it's kind of a catch-22 right now if you're an end user in the world with the supply so tight. But that should, like I said, be supportive to the cash market until we know for sure this year's crop's off to a good start.
All right. And what about the livestock side of things, Jim? What's going on in the cattle and hog markets?
Cattle market was really kind of a rough day today. We had a big outside days down. I'm a little bit disappointed with the cattle market. I'm trying to be optimistic with it. I know inflation is definitely taking root right now. The price of gas is very expensive. But the one thing we are seeing is if you look at kind of the retail sales, Target sales are down, Walmart sales are down, but some of the higher end stores their sales are actually steady to higher. So there is a portion of the segment of the population that is still spending money relatively aggressively. Hotel sectors look very, very full. They're saying driving this Memorial Day weekend is going to be the best in 2 years. So we are continuing to see people essentially say the heck with the high prices. We are going to live life after 2 years of COVID lockdowns. And hopefully that's a good sign for some demand for both the beef and the pork down the line.
All right, Jim Wall, thanks a lot for all that great information. If folks want to get in touch to talk some marketing strategies with you folks at agmarket.net, how do they do that?
I think the best way to go, honestly, is go to agmarket.net, go to our research page and sign up for our research. Also, don't forget to go to the agmarket.net app, download the agmarket.net app. You can get it both on the Google and the iTunes stores.
All right, well, Jim, thanks so much for the insight, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, and have a good Memorial Day weekend.
That again was Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Let's run down those market numbers being brought to you by the folks at Bar Chart. July corn was up a half at 7.72 and a quarter. December was down 2 at 7.23 and a quarter. July soybeans down 12 at 16.81 even. November down 4 3/4 at 15.12 3/4. Soy meal was down $2.70 at 4.1890. Soy oil was down 83 cents at 76.90. September Chicago wheat down 6 1/2 at 11.56 3/4. Minneapolis up 3 1/2 at 12.80 1/2. Kansas wheat down 4 1/4 at 12.38 1/4. September oats up 4 3/4 at 6.26 1/4. August live cattle were 22 cents lower at 132.52. August feeders down 20 cents at 167.90. Lean hogs up 2 cents at 109.05. Pork cutouts down 67 cents at 114 even. Class 3 milk was 3 cents higher at 25.11. And that was your ag market recap here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, Riley Smith takes us through the rest of the program. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. We're coming to the end of May Beef Month, but that doesn't mean we're done celebrating Iowa's beef industry. In fact, one event that epitomizes the values of the beef industry will be kicking off this Friday, the Governor's Charity Steer Show. The charity event is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year and both the Iowa Cattlemen's Association and the Iowa Beef Industry Council couldn't be more excited to kick off this landmark year. Casey Anderson is the manager of the Governor's Charity Steer Show. She talked about the opening ceremony and what we can all expect from the show this year. And well, Casey, you're also the manager of the Governor's Charity Steer Show, and we're going to start on that process real soon and kind of open that up. So let's talk a little bit about, the opening ceremony, which is coming up soon, and what this year will look like for the Steer Show.
Yes, absolutely. So I can't take all the credit. I want to make sure that I share the love, and I'm actually just one small part of the team that plans this event. My co-chair is Tanner Lawton with the Iowa Cattlemen's Association, and the event is actually co-hosted or organized, you could say, by both organizations in the cattle industry headquarters and Ames. So the Iowa Beef Industry Council and the Iowa Cattlemen's Association. Both staff teams help in several different aspects. Tanner and I are just the outward facing contacts, but we are gearing up for a fantastic year. We are super excited. This is the 40th anniversary of the event. So much potential to talk about what the cattle industry has been able to do the last 40 years. This is the industry's big philanthropic event of the year. It's a great opportunity for us to interface with those fairgoers at the Iowa State Fair, to extend that cattleman care mentality to the Ronald McDonald Houses of Iowa, which are the primary benefactors of the funds that are raised from the event.
Right, and for those of our listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with the Governor's Charity Steer Show, let's just talk about, how the contest works, who's selected to show, and then, how the process is that they get matched up with their celebrity showman.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because there's actually a lot of misconceptions out there. We run into it every year, or I'll be at an event and someone will be asking me about it. And it's always just interesting to hear what people's perceptions are about it. The Iowa Beef Industry Council and Iowa Cattlemen's Association do sponsor one calf. We focus primarily on selecting a great family. So we want a calf that is a good representation of beef production in the beef industry in Iowa, but more importantly, we want people that represent the values of the beef industry as well. So we want to work with great people, but each sponsor has their own process. So each year there's 25 calves that are exhibited in the show. And so likewise, we have 25 sponsors, and each one of those sponsors has their own method for identifying who that youth exhibitor is going to be. They pick their own celebrity showman, and then they also fundraise to support the cause. So we assist some of the McDonald's owner operators that sponsor in the show. They're paired up with the Ronald McDonald Houses in Iowa. We assist them in finding their calves. And each year we get people that inquire and ask, hey, can you help me identify a celebrity? And we're always happy to help in that process. But this is really a grassroots driven event for those sponsors because it all starts at the local level with them and identifying who they want to work with each year.
Right, and are there any big names in the show this year that people should know about? Any big name Iowa celebrities?
Yeah, that kind of stuff is still in the process. We haven't heard much from folks because, quite frankly, we're still getting through planting season, obviously, and so that's going to be number one priority. We're a little bit early right now for those pursuits, but I know that there are people that are really competitive. Last year, we had several wrestlers, both Iowa State and Iowa Hawkeye wrestlers. So those sports celebrities, if you will, here in the state of Iowa are always a big deal. But here's what I can tell you. Obviously, we are elated every year to work with the governor, and we've got a great governor right now, Kim Reynolds. She is a champion of agriculture, but being this is the 40th anniversary of the event, we have actually reached out to and are pleased to share that former Governor Terry Branstad is also going to be a celebrity showman. So that's one example of how we really want to reflect back on the past 40 years. And Governor Branstad obviously is a huge influence on this event and the good that it has been able to help create. And so we wanted to work with him to bring him back in the fold and really celebrate this 40th year right.
Okay, and then as we wrap up here, let's just talk a little bit about when that opening ceremony is, and when people can hear about that, and I guess what you'll talk about in that first ceremony.
Yeah, yep. So next Friday, the 27th, we'll be at the Des Moines Ronald McDonald House there midday to talk about May Beef Month, because at the end of the day, that's what all beef producers are united around, right? Producing nutritious, delicious beef. So we want to talk about that, but we also want to talk about, this is the 40th event. So reflect back on the history and the people. Really, that's probably it more than anything. The people that have carried us to where we are today. So 40 years of sponsors, 40 years of celebrity showmen, 40 years of exhibitors that have come together, extended that cattleman care attitude, and have helped raise funds that are dispersed to the 3 Ronald McDonald houses in Iowa, and why that's so important. So we'll have those Ronald McDonald House executives there with us to share some of those sentiments and just help explain why it's been so valuable to them. I guess one thing that is really interesting for those of us that are staff that are involved is every year we get exhibitors that come in, and throughout the whole process, you can see as they begin to understand more about how the event works and understand the Ronald McDonald houses and kind of that dynamic that they work in. And it's always surprising to hear people say, oh, my neighbor down the road had this experience with the Ronald McDonald House, or my family, maybe I had a sibling that spent some time there. And that's what's so neat about it is, if I don't personally have an experience with the house, I probably know someone that does. So there's just a small degree of separation, which really brings that story close to home, and I think helps those youth exhibitors understand what they're truly doing.
Right, and we know it's an amazing program every year, and obviously, like you just said, it has a huge reach across the state. So again, just an amazing program, and it's a great thing that you guys do. As we wrap up here, is there any other information on or Beef Month in general that you'd like to leave with our listeners to think about?
Yeah, the last thing that I want to mention that I probably should have brought up before this is May Beef Month is really just the start of our summer promotions. We'll be rolling into June Steak Month, and then we've got our summer grilling campaigns and that kind of thing. But I want to give a shout out to the county cattlemen, and they're really the MVPs of May Beef Month. We try and provide as many resources as we can to help make sure that they feel equipped to employ May Beef promotions in their own communities. And here's why that is. We understand we certainly have a job to do within our organization, and like I said, a duty to provide value to our producers. But those producers know the small communities across the state of Iowa way better than we ever could, because they live and they work in those communities every day. And so we're really excited each year when we get the opportunity to work with them and just support them in those efforts. And a lot of the counties are doing grillings for local schools, maybe some youth education, maybe some radio ads. So there's a lot of different things that they're doing right now to activate that messaging locally. And I just think sometimes they don't get the credit that they deserve for the work that they're doing locally. So I want to extend a big thanks to them and just make sure that they get some recognition for that.
We'll have more of my discussion with Casey in an episode of AM PM next week. As for right now, Dustin has a look at that ag weather outlook.
Well, the clouds remain across Des Moines, and we did see spotty showers throughout the day, and now those showers look like they might just taper off a little bit tonight, but there's going to be a quick resurgence before they do so. We had highs today in the mid-50s to the low 70s. Tonight will be mid-40s to the low 60s, and then tomorrow we see rain continuing to push out, and we'll start to see those partly sunny skies return, and we'll see highs in the 60s. Now taking a look at the affiliate weather map, we can see Cherokee's going to have some rain showers giving way to partly sunny skies and 67. Shenandoah is going to see rain throughout most of the day and 65. Des Moines going to see partly sunny skies, just a few traces of rain and a high of 62. Waterloo and Albia both going to see showers start to push their way out and partly sunny skies. Waterloo looking for 61, Albia 62. And Clinton going to see showers most of the day, but the sun will start to break through at the end and a high of 62 degrees.
For more detailed forecasts in your part of the state, check with your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. And that's been a check of the Ag Weather Outlook. When we come back, Dustin will bring us his report from yesterday's Plots in the Park discussion. This is Ag Matters PM. As we approach planting season, make sure you stay safe and share the road with your local farmers. Slow-moving tractors with large planters occupy a lot of space on the road, so stay patient and follow at a distance of around 50 feet. You should never, ever try to pass them at a bridge, intersection, hill, or curve. It's far better than putting yourself or someone else at risk. So please, stay safe and remember to tip your hat to your local farmer this planting season. This message was brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Welcome back to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Water quality has been a hot-button topic in the state for many years now. Upstream farmers are needing to accomplish certain tasks and have certain tools available to grow a successful crop, but urban folks downstream are worried about what is showing up in their drinking water. Unfortunately, they've not really been able to come to an agreeable solution yet. That is why Landis Cooperative reached out to the Des Moines Waterworks to see if there's a way to help balance out both of their needs. Dustin went out yesterday to attend their inaugural Plots in the Park discussion to talk about this unlikely partnership.
Water quality has been a hot-button topic in the state for many years now, and upstream farmers are needing to accomplish certain tasks and have certain tools available to grow successful crops, but urban folks downstream are worried about what's showing up in their drinking water. Head-to-head confrontation has done nothing more than draw lines in the sand and make people harden to each other's concerns. That situation is not conducive to finding an agreeable solution. That's why Landis Cooperative reached out to Des Moines Waterworks to see if the two of them could talk and find reasonable solutions that can educate urbanites and rural citizens alike. Thus, Plots in the Park was born.
This is an unlikely partnership, right? If you think about all that's gone on between what happens in rural and what happens in the cities, something like today historically shouldn't happen. But I think it's the reason why it should happen today. And talking about the issues and the solutions and how both sides of this, the rural or farmers in particular, and the cities and water could come together. And that there absolutely is a path. Now, it takes a lot of discipline and patience and understanding in days like this to make that happen. But that started 8 years ago to the point of today where right over there is where the drinking water comes out. And we're demonstrating what we do on the farm with the plots that Dan Bjorklund and others will talk about here shortly. So the goal of this is really simple. How do we really bridge between what's going on in rural and what needs to happen for the water here in a city like Des Moines and the suburban areas that pull out of this as well? And it starts with understanding. It starts with understanding both sides of it. We have some of our farmers and board of directors here today. Some of your board is here today, Ted. And that understanding is where this has to start, is that both sides get it, but how do we fix it? How do we close that exists between? And that's the important part.
We came up with this idea, working jointly, of developing plots in the park that will demonstrate sustainable practices related to cover crops, nutrient management, and other things that Landis is the real expert at. We're really providing the space, providing the opportunity for them to do this near their new headquarters and their innovation connector. But we're also doing it for slightly selfish reasons, and that is they're going to bring us an audience. They're going to bring us folks who we can then talk to about our story and the challenges that we have and the things that we do in our endeavor to provide safe, clean drinking water to 600,000 people every day. So it's a great upstream, downstream partnership where we can meet folks upstream, we can invite them downstream, we can tell them our story, and then hopefully someday we'll get to do the opposite. We'll get to go upstream and see the things that they're doing upstream to help with sustainable water quality improvement here in the state.
What we're really doing out here is we're looking at sustainability. How can we help educate both upstream and downstream on sustainable practices that our farmers can use to protect the most important resource and precious resource we have in Iowa, and that's the soil. Everybody wins when we take that into consideration. And I think about Melanda's board that's here today. No one on the Landis board, none of the farmers on the Landis board want to over-apply crop inputs, because especially at the prices that some of those inputs are today. Nobody wants to do that. So sustainable practices are really what this is about. And you'll see to my left, we have 3 blocks that were put together. One is a cover crop, both perennial rye and red clover. And I won't go into too much of the weeds with it, but we got the cover crop, which can definitely help protect the soil, build the organic matter. Then we have corn, block of corn, and a block of soybeans, because a very, very important resource for the state of Iowa. So 2 weeks ago, we came out to the park and tilled up the soil. We did soil tests, and so we went and sampled in the 3 blocks, got the nutrient analysis back, and we have the technology today in agriculture to apply exactly what you need. I call it almost the Goldilocks method of nutrient management. You don't want too much, and you got to have enough to get the production that you need. So we're trying to fight not too much, not too little, but that just right. And we have the technology to do that. We've had that for a long time. I've been an agronomist for 42 years. And I can tell you that not everyone in ag retail that I have known has been concerned about sustainability. There are some that basically what they wanted to do was sell as much inputs as they could to the producers. I joined Landis 6 months ago when I could have very easily retired. And I did it because I believed in what Matt Carson's talked about in the Landis way. The Landis way is doing what's best for the farmer members. And I am really excited to be a part of this project and several other projects that we have in place. And the innovation that's coming into agriculture is absolutely amazing. When I started in the business, we plowed everything up, and all you saw was black soil. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people love that smell of that black soil. And really what that was demonstrating was that you were having carbon being released up into the atmosphere. And it was almost like, if you want to use the analogy of dollar bills floating up, because you were losing some of that productivity. Iowa State and some of the land grant universities many years ago started talking about more conservation, more reduced tillage. And over the 40 years, you very seldom, when you drive outside of Des Moines or any of the cities into the rural areas, you very seldom just see blackened soil. There's various levels of residue left. That is sustainability, and those practices have already been in place. Adding a cover crop to it takes it to a next level of protection and basically capturing any nutrients that might not have been used by the corn or beans with the cover crop, and it'll be released the next season for whatever crop you're going to the next season. And the nice thing is, it also reduces the expense to the farmer. And again, you don't have to talk to anybody here about what they think about the prices of inputs of farm inputs today. It is extraordinarily high. So anything we can do to help farmers reduce those costs and at the same time help really protect the groundwater. We can do this, guys. We can really do this. It's just a matter of we have to be determined to do it. And a lot of attention to cover crop, and you could say that maybe we've gotten up to 4 to 6%. 4 to 6% of the acres that are using cover crop is not enough. So the people that are not using cover crops, they've made a decision not to do that. We have to educate people of why. You look at something like a red clover. If we can come in here and show the benefit of this type of a cover crop and what it'll do and what it'll put back into the soil, I think that'll help us. But it is all about education. That's the only way that we're going to move this forward, but we can do it.
We find that when we're able to tell people our story, it's very powerful. They understand that there are huge challenges associated with providing safe, clean drinking water. So we're very anxious to create an upstream-downstream partnership in that way. We're also anxious to learn what can be done and what is being done on the landscape to help improve source water quality. We understand Iowa is an agricultural state and it's going to stay an agricultural state. We firmly believe that we can have both successful, productive agriculture and clean surface waters in the state of Iowa. This is a perfect example of the kind of practices that are going to be needed on every acre, and we're happy to be a part of that.
It's just as important to have our farmers here this summer as it is having drinking water consumers. At the end of the day, we've got to showcase the farmer that it's not just cover crops. There's many other tools and there's paths. And it will only work for any farmer when they can get the win they need, when they can get the economics that helps them win. And so it's the role of Landis as their cooperative they own to be able to put the path in motion to show them that there is other options, there's ways that could be equal to or better than what they're doing today, and we have to take that responsibility. I don't blame our farmers. It's a complicated topic, but Landis and companies like Landis have to step to the plate and start taking full responsibility for how we educate, how we engage, how we collaborate, how we become more transparent. And when we start leading, our farmers will follow. But somebody's got to take that path and lead it forward in a way that's really directly owned by farmers. And there's no better place, in my humble opinion, than a cooperative like Landis.
Thanks, Dustin. And that is it for this episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can find our video content and previous episodes of AM PM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget our free twice daily market podcasts on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Avery Haskell and Dustin Hoffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.